I'm back from my mini vacation down in the Florida Keys, but a nice new smartphone came out while I was gone, and that is the Samsung S9. That's right, every single year in the first quarter, Samsung releases their S series for the Galaxy phones. And this time, it's the Samsung S9 and the Samsung S9 Plus. I just did a rumor video not too long ago, and pretty much all the rumors in there are practically true. But before I tell you any of the features in the Samsung S9 and Samsung S9 Plus, let me tell you what colors is it coming in. First of all, it's coming in lilac purple, which is, it's a pretty nice purple. Samsung always makes these pretty interesting colors. The iPhone X sure doesn't have that, it just comes in white and black. But the Samsung S9 has lilac purple, has midnight black, and it has coral blue. So some nice three options right there. It doesn't have white, interesting, but you got the nice purple, you got the blue, and you got the black. Most people will choose the black. Overall, pretty nice colors. On the front of the Samsung S9 looks almost identical. It is identical to the front of the Samsung S8. That's because they didn't change the screen size or remove any of the bezels at all. I was hoping they were going to remove the bottom bezel, below the bottom chin, but they didn't remove it, so they kept it the exact same thing as the Samsung S9. It's both the 5.8-inch OLED display, which looks beautiful, and then for the Plus version, it's the 6.2-inch OLED display. Samsung loves to take shots at Apple. In case you haven't seen the Samsung kind of roasting Apple and like the notch ad about the iPhone X, in case you've never seen that commercial, Samsung loves roasting Apple, and they even threw in a little diss there in their little keynote. They said, well, the Samsung S9 doesn't have a notch, right? At least it doesn't have a notch. I like the notch. It's not that bad. You get extra screen, and extra screen is always a good thing. A little notch here and there, not so bad. But the Samsung S9 does not remove any bezels compared to the Samsung S8. Slightly disappointing, but the front, exact same thing. Now we can get to the part that Samsung changed. The back of the Samsung S9 compared to the Samsung S8. Then they finally have changed the fingerprint placement for the fingerprint sensor. Instead of that awkward position on the top right of the phone, it's finally in the center for the regular version and the Plus version. But also, you're going to notice on the Plus version, kind of like on the Note 8, so the Note 8 camera kind of shifted to the Samsung S9, and there's more features coming in a second. On the Samsung S9, you now have a dual camera with dual optical image stabilization, of course, just like the Note 8. It's kind of a transfer of the camera, except the S9 has another little feature up in its sleeve. I like to thank Samsung for finally moving the fingerprint sensor into the middle of the phone, because the S8 was horrendous placement, and then you finally moved it to the correct spot, but you really shouldn't have put it in the wrong spot in the first place. And still, Samsung, you still have the Bixby button on the Samsung S9, and you still can't remap it to anything you want. Come on, man. People really don't use Bixby that much. Imagine having a Siri button or a Google Assistant button. That would just be annoying. But then the Samsung S9 has still a Bixby button. I know it's improving every second, but still, people don't need personal assistants on a button. That's kind of a waste of space. The Samsung S9 continues with the IP68 water resistance. It continues with the wireless charging. It continues with the expandable storage. But now, I am excited to announce this. Not only the fingerprint placement somewhere else, Samsung has finally added stereo speakers into the mix. And now officially, the stereo speakers are 1.4 times louder than the Samsung S8. And Samsung says it's the loudest speakers ever in a Samsung phone. And that's because you're using dual speakers. Of course, it's gonna be loud. Not only does the S9 have stereo speakers, it also uses Dolby Atmos, a little software technology to sense what sounds to put where, which kind of makes you more immersed in the whole experience. Overall, I think stereo speakers makes it an overall immersive experience, especially with that infinity display. It's super nice, and they finally added stereo speakers to the mix. So let's just give a hand to Samsung for changing the fingerprint placement and adding stereo speakers. Two things that needed to happen, and they finally did it. Now to a little bit about the processor. Both the Samsung S9 and the S9 Plus are now using the Snapdragon 845 chip instead of the Snapdragon 835 chip from last year. So you're going to expect some nice battery improvements, some nice performance improvements, especially with the same battery capacity. Even though it's the same thing as the Samsung S8, you should expect a little more performance and battery life out of the S9. Other than the stereo speakers, the Snapdragon 845 chip now, and the movement of the fingerprint scanner, so far it's not much different than the Samsung S9. Those are three features right now. And then then when I get into the camera, here comes all the features just starting to roll in like a train. I mean, the S8 doesn't really have that much different than the S9, but still, when it comes to the camera, it's a pretty gigantic difference. Especially when you're looking at the Plus model, which has a dual camera, which is telephoto, and it optically image stabilizes the 2x zoom. It's not 3x zoomed in, it's not a super wide angle, it's just a nice telephoto like on the iPhone X and on the Note 8. Nothing different, just a regular 2x zoom, which is always great, because I love that in video and photos. Just to get it 2x optically zoomed in, you don't have to take away any of the quality when you just add another camera. But the dual camera isn't the only new feature that comes into the camera app and the camera hardware on the Samsung S9. And that's because you have AR emoji and the ever-changing aperture of the camera. Do you remember the rumors video for the Samsung S9? I said that the camera is gonna have an aperture for like the wide one, the regular one, as an aperture of 1.5, which is very low, and then the telephoto one's gonna have an aperture of 2.4. Well, I mean, both cameras, the wide angled and the telephoto, has an aperture of 1.5 to an aperture of 2.4. Pretty cool, right? Because it's not a fixed aperture, so it's not just an everlasting aperture, it's an ever-changing aperture. The lower the aperture, the more light comes into the camera sensor, which is huge because camera sensors on smartphones are really small. So for the past few years, I mean for the past 5 years, you've just been seeing this slowly trickling down of the aperture to get better low light photos. I mean, that's the only thing that smartphone cameras really can't compete with DSLRs, and that's in low light. And the Samsung S9 is trying to help with that with the 1.5 aperture, which is really the lowest of any smartphone camera ever. But that's not it. When you're taking a photo outside and there's a lot of sunlight coming in, the aperture automatically closes into an aperture of 2.4, so it could be a crispier photo instead of being at 1.5. It's gonna be at 2.4, so it's gonna allow less sunlight in, but it's gonna be more crispy. And you got enough sunlight there, so you don't have to worry about the aperture. It's really cool to see real time that the aperture could just change like this from 1.5 to 2.4 depending on the scene. I mean, I don't know if this is really a breakthrough in the smartphone camera, but it's truly a nice addition, because I mean, really, I've never seen this before on a camera of this size. It doesn't even happen on many action cameras or even cameras on drones. I mean, this is really interesting that it's happening on the Samsung S9. It's an ever-changing aperture, not just a fixed aperture. It changes depending on the scenery. I mean, I think this is really cool. Is it a worth the upgrade over the S8 just for the camera? Not really, but I mean, it does have a dual camera, which is pretty nice. Also in the camera app is a multitude of additions of AR. I'm just going to focus on the AR emojis because that's the most interesting, especially with the emojis coming out on the iPhone X. And now with the AR emojis on the Samsung S9, it takes a little picture of your face and makes a little Bitmoji or AR emoji out of it. So you could use it as a sticker, use it to take a photo, kind of like AR, kind of like a Snapchat face kind of, but it uses it just to take a picture of your face and to make a little emoji out of it. It's called AR emoji, and this is kind of a steal off of the Emoji feature off of the iPhone X. I mean, really, this kind of just looks like Bitmoji, so I mean, I really don't know who's going to use this, but still, Samsung, this is a little bit too far of a reach of a copy. I mean, I still gotta get it. You gotta get that little feature out there for the Chinese market, but still, come on. AR emoji and emoji, do you not see the difference? And that's really it for the Samsung S9. Personally, I do not think it's that worth of the upgrade. If you have the Samsung S8, I'll probably rate for the Samsung S10, so it's kind of get more worth the value, but it's definitely not that bad of an upgrade overall. Just really don't think about upgrading from the Note 8 to the S9. You're really just getting, I mean, dual camera, fingerprint placement, and a new little camera with a not fixed aperture. Doesn't make a whole difference in the world, but it's still an upgrade nonetheless. The Samsung S9 and the Samsung S9 Plus is going to be available to pre-order on March 2nd, so just a couple days away, and then you can pick it up in stores and officially receive your S9 on March 16th. I mean, this was a reported date earlier in the leaks, so it just turns out the leaks were true. I mean, really with S9, S9. That's what's happening with these phones nowadays. The leaks are becoming more true and more true on top of that. Remember, the S9 comes in 3 different colors, and the S9 starts at $720. I mean, I say that's a good price point, but for the S9 Plus, which has the dual camera, and it's kind of battling with the iPhone 8 Plus on this one, it starts at $840, which, I mean, it's a big difference than the S9 for $120 more. But I think it's worth it for the extra big screen and the extra bigger battery and the dual camera. That's all that's worth it. I'd love to hear your opinion on the Samsung S9 and S9 Plus in the comment section below. And while you're doing that, make sure you hit that little bell icon to stay notified whenever I post a video. And while you're still doing that, make sure you smash that subscribe button right here to stay informed. And I'll see you in the next one.